Hi! So we are going to talk about gluing up your boards for your cutting board now. It is Spirit Week, so hence the bandana. I'm gonna first talk about what you need before you start gluing, because you never want to start a project unless you have everything in front of you that you need. So this is our glue station here, and our clamps go up on the wall, so you can grab clamps. You're gonna need enough to go, I usually go about, on this glue table here, put about 3 spaces in between them. You should have the end of your board should be able to go to this clamp, and then same down there. You're gonna need strips of wood to go in between your actual cutting board and your clamp on both sides. Okay, and you're gonna need glue. You guys are gonna use this stuff right here. It says, do not lose the red cap. Mrs. Johnson gets really mad when I have to keep replacing these red caps. I'm gonna use this Titebond 3 because I am making this a counter, and this is waterproof stuff. You guys can get away with just using this original Titebond wood glue, because with your cutting board you're not going to be soaking it in water. You can wipe it off, so that does not require like waterproof stuff, but I want mine to be super strong because it's going to be an entire counter. Another thing you want is a wet paper towel to wipe off all the glue you're going to get on your hands, a scrap piece of wood for pounding, and a rubber mallet for pounding on your scrap piece of wood when your wood is not sitting tight in the clamps. First thing we're going to talk about is how your end grain should look when you set them in the clamps. So you've probably noticed that when you look at your end grain, it kind of goes in this sort of pattern. Okay, now once in a while you get one that's pretty straight, and that one we'll talk about in a second. But when you go to line up your end grain, you want it so that it's kind of going frowny, smiley, frowny, and these straight ones you just kind of throw in wherever. What happens if we don't line it up this way? No bueno. It's frowny, 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 frowny. Over time, you're gonna get warpage. I'm a shop teacher, not even sure if that's a word, not even sure if that's how you spell warpage. But what's gonna happen is it's going to kind of start going into a rainbow shape like this. So I have this set up right now just like I want you guys to, okay? So we've got frowny, smiley, frowny, smiley, frowny. Hard to see that one, but it should be a smiley. Yep, there we go. Yeah, so that's how we want that to get set. Okay, next we're gonna talk about what you want your face grain to look like. So the reason for this is not so much for warpage, but is it aesthetically pleasing? Does it look nice? If it looks funky, you're gonna be kind of upset that you put all that work into your cutting board. Okay, so same thing here, we want the grain going opposite direction. Now sometimes you get a knot in there and your grain starts going other directions, but whichever direction it's going the most in is the one that you would consider it going that direction. So you see my arrows are pointing that way mostly, so that would mean my grain is going that way. This one, same thing, grain's going this way, now opposite. Sometimes again you get those straight pieces in there, throw them in wherever it looks the best, and then, you know, going that way next. This, I'm going to use this as a good example here. You can see I've got a lot of like character going on this side, not so much over here. I actually did not do that on purpose, and I don't really like it. So this is not glued right now. This is what we call a dry fit, and the reason we do this is so that we can fix any mistakes before we put glue on it. So like I just said, I don't like the look of that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna undo my clamps and I'm gonna switch up my boards a little bit, keeping in mind that I still need to make sure that my end grain is going smiley, frowny, smiley, frowny. One more thing to check is flip your boards over, okay? See which side you like the best. If one side has more character than the other side, you might want to use that side as your face up. Okay, so I've repositioned my pieces, and one thing we haven't talked about yet is when you get your clamps on here, you want to make sure that they are backed out as far as they'll go. That way when you need to start tightening them up, you have enough screw here left to do that. Here's an example of one that is all the way in, so if I wanted to put clamping pressure on this, I can't. It won't go anymore. So I'd want to back this all the way out. Once you have that done and you have your clamps all aligned here, and you make sure that your spacing is the same on this side, you want to bring these, okay, so you just kind of pull this, push this button right here, and then pull it as tight to your scrap wood here as possible. And then I'd want to kind of align my end pieces again. This is not clamped right now. And you can see, like if I put it this way, you can see they are not even like they were before, because before I had to kind of pound them down and make them stay down in the clamps. Next thing you're gonna do is you can either label your pieces like I did here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or on your smaller pieces, you could literally like just make a giant X across and then line your X up. When this helps because what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip these pieces up on edge, and then we're gonna put glue on here. And so I'm actually gonna back my clamps out just a little bit so I have enough room to flip these up on edge, because otherwise I'm gonna be fighting with this the whole time because it's pretty tight right now. All right, so what I've done is I've left that first board right here down. I flipped everything else up on edge. So like this one, I'm gonna flip down back this way after I get glue on it. And then I'll keep moving one after the other. So here's the glue line. I kind of wave my bottle back and forth. And then I'm gonna flip this down. And I call this, it's a very technical term, you guys, smooshing. So kind of rub it back and forth so that that glue line, you can kind of smush that glue all over the other edge. A common mistake that people make is they don't put enough glue in, and so then if you drop your cutting board, it's gonna break in the seam. So now when I flip this up, yeah, you should see it has pretty much covered the whole edge of the board there. Put it back down. So this is what it looks like when you're putting it on. And another common mistake that people make is putting way too much on. And so then what happens when you start putting clamping force on it is it kind of goobers all over and it drips all over my clamps, and it's really hard to clean the clamps when there's a bunch of pieces of wood in them. So then you end up having to clean it all off afterwards. So what I'm doing now is finishing up tipping them back on edge and smooshing. Smoosh. Told you guys. Technical term. You're gonna have a quiz on that later. Okay, once I make sure that everything is all aligned, so I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You guys don't have that many pieces in yours. But because I'm using this tape on 3, it glues quite quickly. But anyways, once you have your pieces completely aligned, then you can start pulling your clamps back in. So this, push it in and then push it towards you. Like I told you guys, okay, you're gonna get some glue on your boards and kind of messy, so this is on your hands. So that's why I suggest having the wet paper towel here. Okay, so we've got everything glued up, and this is what it looks like. You can see in the back there, I've added an extra clamp on top because it was kind of extending out past my last clamp, and I don't want that. I want to have clamping pressure all the way to the end. You can see it's very uneven here, but that's okay because we're going to trim that off and make it look pretty with the machines. You can also see some glue squeeze out, which is also good. That means that you have enough glue in there. When you start getting huge globs, that means that you're using way too much glue. You want to maybe get a friend to help you when you are clamping, because you want to make sure that these are getting as flat as possible. Okay, we've already used the planer to make them all the same thickness, but sometimes they're a little warped when you go to put them in the clamps, and so it helps to have somebody help push it down, help be the hammerer with the rubber hammer and the scrap wood. And another thing I forgot to mention with the clamps, when you're putting them in here, you want to make sure that they are far enough away from each other. I know I said have like 3 spaces, so that's good, but you want to make sure that they're far enough away from each other so that these handles are not going to hit each other when you're tightening them up. So that's why 3 spaces is a pretty good amount. Going back to the glue squeeze out, you may have seen people take this wet paper towel and kind of wipe it off. I don't like to do that because the glue then kind of sinks into the grain of your wood, and then you can't always get down that far with the planer or the time saver to get all that glue out of the grains. So what we're gonna do is use a chisel to chip this stuff off after it dries. If you've been taught otherwise before and that's worked for you, that's fine. This is just my opinion. I don't like doing it that way. I like to chip it off afterwards with a chisel. All right, that pretty much concludes our gluing up your boards video. Sometimes there's more of you in line waiting to use the table. Mine is taking up the entire table because it's so big, but more than one of you can use this table at a time. When yours is clamped, you can move it like off to the side so that somebody else can put clamps in here if there's somebody else in line. Otherwise, just leave it here. That's about it. Hope you guys have a good day.